News Talk 94.5 WPTI, 96.7 FM WTOB. You're listening to the Wealth Guardians radio show with Doug Ray, helping you to retire that job, but keep your paycheck. And I'm your host, Doug Ray, and with me is, of course, Mr. Brice Payne.
Good morning, Doug. That sound you hear is the sound of my brackets burning, being disintegrated. How are you?
I think my brackets are doing okay. Randy.
All right, we'll see.
I got Duke winning the whole thing. You know.
I did a couple of brackets, and I think I had Duke winning one of them. Yeah, but maybe they'll survive. Hey, it's a great spring week out there, great spring weekend. Thank you for taking a few minutes out of your weekend to spend it with us here at the Wealth Guardians. In the studio this morning, you've got Doug Ray and myself, Brice Payne. And we're going to talk to you this morning, as we do on the first Saturday of just about any month, as we're dipping into the listener mailbag and questions and seeing what those listeners out there had as far as questions for us as holistic financial planners specializing in retirement planning, as we do here at the Wealth Guardians. So thank you for those questions, and we're going to get to them here in just a minute. Doug, why don't you do the honors of the Wealth Guardian Service Salute, please?
Absolutely. We always like to honor our veterans, our service members, and our first responders in this show because you carry a big load, and we thank you for that and your family's sacrifice for what you do for us. So thanks so much.
Oftentimes a thankless job. So yes, the families often need to get that recognition as well. So thank you out there for that. Now let's, before we get into the listener mailbag, one other thing that we do at the start of every show here is we just take a minute and help you get to better know who these financial planners are at the Wealth Guardians, what makes us tick, who we are. And one way we do that is we ask ourselves a question. Of course, you can join along and ask yourself the same question. But here we go. Doug, would you rather have a getaway home that has a view of the mountains, a lake, or the ocean? And why?
Well, I like them both. So I've got the condo up in Boone.
Right.
I've got a great view of Grandfather.
Spectacular view your place has.
I love the mountains in the summer, the fall, and the spring. Don't care for it in the winter.
Yeah. No.
The beach, oceans, love them in the spring and the fall. Don't care for it in the
summer. All right. I can see that. Yeah.
It's just too humid and hot.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it kind of changes. When you're young, I think you like the view of the ocean much more than you would say a picture of the mountainscape, being able to see 30, 40 miles off in the mountains. But I think the older we get, the more we start to appreciate, at least my experiences, I've come to appreciate that view much more than I would have when I was young. A view of the ocean just isn't to me what it used to be.
Yeah.
Now a lake, I love the view of a lake.
Yeah.
But the ocean, it's interesting, but it's not. For me, I get bored of it. Anyway, so there you go. Doug is a mountains person, and I think I am probably a lake person and then a mountains person. But all right, well, there you go. Ask yourself that same question. See if you tick the same way Doug and I do. All right, let's dip into this listener mailbag here, Doug. At the start of every month, we go to these questions that have accumulated for us over the last couple of weeks. And the first one we're getting to here is Stan in Mount Tabor. And Stan says, Doug, Garrett, and Brice, I'd planned to start my Social Security last year and then just never got around to it. So I've just been pulling money out of my savings account to help cover expenses each month. I actually have enough cash to continue doing this for another year. So should I just keep doing this and put off my Social Security for another year? Your thoughts, guys?
Well, I tell you what, it concerns me that you haven't done any more planning than this. If you're dipping into your emergency nest egg to make ends meet, I think you need to do a little bit more retirement planning than you've done. Certainly turning your Social Security on is something that we tell everybody. It's your money. If you want it, go get it. But you do get those 8% delayed credits and cost of living adjustments. So that's a guaranteed return until age 70.
It is indeed. And, Stan, I appreciate you at least thinking about it, but this is something that a good financial planner would have gone over with you in detail. We here at the Wealth Guardians are certified with the National Social Security Association, and we, in fact, have a seminar coming up in a couple of weeks here that I'll get to the details of here in a little bit. But that is the decision on when to file and how to file for Social Security is one of the, if not it's one of the biggest financial decisions you're going to make in retirement. And you really want to make sure that you're making that decision right, because Doug and I have seen people who did not make their filing strategies correctly, and it ended up costing them hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so you do want to make sure that you're putting some time into this with somebody who knows how to calculate all the factors that go into something like this and give you an idea of what's the best way to file. Now, as Doug said, every year that you don't file up until age 70, your benefit essentially grows close to 8%. And more accurately saying that is, it's every month that you don't file, it grows 1/12 of 8%. So once you do file, that 8% growth stops. So if you have assets put aside that you could live off of in the meantime and let that benefit continue to grow, that might not be a bad decision. But in your case, Dan, we simply do not have enough information. This is why you'd have to sit down with a financial planner and go through a whole planning process to get to the answer to that question. But I like the fact that you're thinking about it. And you say that you filed last year. Now, if it's been over 365 days, it's too late to change that. But if it's been a little less than a year, you might still have the option of undoing that filing. And if it wasn't what was in your best, the best decision for you to make to file that way, you might have an option to change that up and file in a different way. But you got to do it within 365 days. So thank you very much, Stan, for that question. And we'd love to sit down with you and help you come to the real answer of what's behind that. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Wealth Guardian Show with Doug Ray. In the studio this morning is Brice Payne and Doug Ray, and we're dipping into listener mailbag as we do once a month. And our first question was from Stan in Mount Tabor. We're going to move on now to Peter in Hillsboro. And Peter says, Wealth Guardians, I'm stunned after finding out how high the fees are in my variable annuity. I'm furious with my soon-to-be former broker. Are these fees normal? It's taking a lot of self-discipline to not call the guy and cuss him out. Variable annuities, Doug, we're not a big fan of those.
We don't use them.
We're not.
Because the fees are high.
Because the fees generally are pretty high for them. Variable annuities, I know the word annuity out there gets a lot of bad play. And a lot of the reason it does is because of variable annuities and how high those fees are. But there are different types of annuities out there. There's fixed annuities, which are mostly like CDs. There's fixed index annuities, which has you able to participate on the upside of the market without participating on the downside of the market. Social Security is an annuity. An annuity simply means it's guaranteed income that you can't outlive. Social Security is if you retired from your job and you have a pension option, and you could either take the lump sum of your pension, let's say $200,000, and invest it as you see fit, or they'll probably give you a monthly income option too. So instead of $200,000, you get $500 a month, something like that, for the rest of your life, no matter how long you live. If you took that option, you're annuitizing your pension. But a variable annuity is one type of annuities that really get a lot of bad press, and deservedly, in our opinion here. They are really high in fees, and the only way that they work is if whatever amount you put into it after it comes to term, you give that money over to the annuity company and they start paying you lifetime income. And that's really something that we find most people do not need in their financial plan. They've got enough Social Security as guaranteed monthly income that they don't need to take a large chunk of their assets that they've saved and give it over to an insurance company to simply pay them back their own money over the years. So we're not big fans of those, but this really does come down to the nature of your question, Peter, does come down to that you and your advisor apparently did not have a good enough discussion. He wasn't as forthright with you as perhaps he should have been about what the costs were on this variable annuity and give you the opportunity to weigh all the pros and cons of getting into one. So I'm sorry for that. I wish I could say that was more uncommon, Doug, but it is fairly common that advisors don't give out all the details of something like that they should.
Yeah, it really is sad. I mean, the average fees in a variable annuity is 3 to 4%,
and we've seen them as high as almost 7.
Yeah, well, yeah, I saw 8%.
Yeah, wow.
This lady's broker hung every rider he could on.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Peter, I'm sorry that happened to you. You do need to have a discussion with your soon-to-be former advisor. But if you do ever want to sit down with a holistic financial planner that is a fiduciary and obligated to look after your best interests and does not believe in variable annuities, then I would certainly encourage you to give us a call here at the Wealth Guardians. And our phone number is 336-391-3409. Be happy to see what we could do to perhaps have your portfolio reallocated in a way that makes more sense for you. And Doug, that first question of Stan's was talking about Social Security. Let's take a minute here and talk about our next seminar that's coming up. And we do the seminar twice a year, the Social Security filing strategies. For a lot of people out there, when they are approaching retirement, they're now facing the question, do I file for Social Security at the same time that I retire? Do I file for Social Security as soon as I turn 62 and I'm eligible for it? Should I wait until a later year, my full retirement age, a later year? And there's a lot of thoughts and calculations that goes into that, and everybody is different. What is the right filing strategy for one couple is not going to be the right filing strategy for another couple. Just like taking one medication is right for your neighbor, it's not going to be the right medication for you. So we are certified with the National Social Security Association. We would encourage you to come in and sit down and listen to what it is we have to say about things to consider when deciding how to file for Social Security. There is no cost or obligation to come to the seminar, but you do have to register. And it's Thursday, April 24th, and then again on Tuesday, April 29th at 6:30 p.m. in Clemens. Give us a call, 336-391-3409. You can also register by going to our website, thewealthguardians.com, and click on the events tab. No cost or obligation, but you do have to register. So we would encourage you to do that. Doug, we've got to go ahead and cut to a break here as we do every weekend morning. And what are we going to do as we go into break?
I don't know.
You do too.
I do.
We're going to leave you with a trivia question.
I hate this part.
No, this is your favorite part of the show. Here we go. Doug, and this one is customized for you, by the way.
Well,
on April 6, 1965, the first commercial communication satellite is launched. It's called the Intelsat-1, aka Early Bird. It facilitated the first live TV broadcast from a satellite. What was this broadcast of? All right. Well, stick around for the answer to that trivia question on the other side of this break. See if we stumped Doug here. This is Brice Payne. With me is Doug Ray. The show is the Wealth Guardians, helping you retire the job and keep the paycheck. And this is News Talk 94.5, WPTI. And this is 96.7 FM, WTOB. News Talk 94.5, WPTI. 96.7 FM, WTOB. Welcome back to the Wealth Guardian Show, where we help you retire the job and keep the paycheck. I'm Brice Payne in the Wealth Guardian studio, along with Doug Ray. And in this second segment, we're going to continue opening up that listener mailbag and dipping into questions that you guys have sent us over the last month since we did this last time. Now, before we answer that trivia question that we left Doug and you hanging with at the end of our last segment, I want to ask you a couple more questions. Are you planning to retire? Okay. Have you met with a retirement income certified professional who is also a fiduciary? If you have not, then here we go. I'm going to invite you to take us up on a complimentary review of your current situation. As certified retirement planning specialists, we're going to put together a customized written plan with strategies for portfolio allocation, income distribution, Social Security filing, and tax efficiency, with even the additional benefit of often reducing both the risk and the fees of your current plan. So here you go. If you've put aside at least $400,000 for retirement and you want to take us up on this no cost, no obligation review, give us a call. Our phone number is 336-391-3409. That's 336-391-3409. You can also visit us at our website, thewealthguardians.com. That's thewealthguardians.com to learn more. Let us show you in black and white how to retire the job and keep the paycheck. All right, so let's get back to this trivia question. And I'm sure some of you out there knew this, and there is a reason that I customize this trivia question for Doug. So Doug, let's recap this here. On April 6th, 1965, where were you at that time? 1965.
I think we were living in Asheboro.
Okay.
Second grade.
Okay, second grade. So on April 6th, 1965, the first commercial communication satellite is launched. It was called Intelsat-1. We referred to it as the Early Bird. It facilitated the first live TV broadcast from a satellite. What was this broadcast of? And this has something to do very similar with something that you did at one point in your life.
Oh boy. You got me stumped. I'm going to guess here.
Okay.
Oh, Captain Kangaroo.
Yeah, not quite. What would Captain Kangaroo have had to do with some point in your life?
Nothing.
Okay.
I feel no.
It broadcast, the very first live satellite broadcast was of Gemini 6 landing in the Atlantic. Okay. And why do I say that's related to something that you used to do?
Well, flew in the Navy.
You flew in the Navy, but you were stationed there off of Cape Canaveral. Mm-hmm. And you were tasked sometimes with going out there in your plane and looking for things that had fallen into the ocean there. Not one of the more noted ones is when the Challenger had its situation.
Yeah, it was sad.
It was indeed. So that's why I threw that trivia question out there for you. But I didn't know that. I honestly had never thought about what was the first satellite broadcast. Well, there you go. That's what it was. All right, let's get back to these listener questions here. So we tackled Stan and Peter's questions on the first segment. Let's now move to Nick and Ashboro. And Nick says, Doug and Brice and Garrett. I see he didn't put me last that time. I like that. I'm a teacher, and I'm planning on retiring in the next 5 years. But I started a side business during this pandemic, and it's actually still going well to this day. I'm able to live off of my teacher's salary just fine. So how should I invest this extra money that I'm making? Well, Nick, certainly thank you for being a teacher. Sometimes I almost view that as a first responder or somebody who serves, because it is important that our kids have good teachers out there. So thank you for what you do in that. I know that's oftentimes a thankless job. I was a teacher once myself. Your question is going to come down to time horizon, growth expectance or growth needs, and what kind of losses you feel are acceptable. If we're talking about investing this money, some investments have risk associated with them that mean your investment could go down. We're all very familiar with the stock market. Bonds can go down in value as well. Doug, a bond that you bought in 2020 and 2022 was worth 50% of what you paid for it. When $1,000 you paid for it, it was worth $500 2 years later. So a lot of times people think of bonds as a safe investment. Well, not in all situations, they're not. But there are safe investments out there as well. Anything that's FDIC in theory is safe. There's other types of investments as well. Market-linked CDs are something that's gaining popularity out there, where it allows you to participate on the upside of the market with not participating on the downside or limited participation on the downside. But it's going to come down to your time horizon. And what do we mean by that, Nick? How long until you plan on using this money? If it's going to be used for retirement and you're going to work for another 5 years, that probably means you've got a time horizon of 5 years or better. Okay. If you have a shorter time horizon, maybe you want to put a down payment on a house 2 years from now. You probably don't want to go in all in the market on something like that, because as luck would have it, as soon as we would do that, the market's going to go down, and now we don't have that same amount that we wanted to put in as a down payment for a home. So the shorter your time horizon, the less aggressive you generally want to be with your monies. Your growth needs. Let's take a look at what your other sources of income are going to be in retirement. If you've been a teacher for a while, perhaps you have a pension. You'll have Social Security. I don't know if you've got any other. How long are you going to keep this other business going after you retire from being a teacher? So let's take a look at what our growth needs are off of this. And then what kind of losses do you find acceptable? If your savings, your investments went down 30%, is that okay with you? Or do you draw the line at maybe a 10% loss or a 15% loss?
Yeah, Nick, I'll add this too. Operating as fiduciaries, we just can't sit in a public forum like this radio show and tell you what to invest those teacher salaries in. We need to ask all of those questions that Brice just talked about and more to give you a good, solid advice of how to invest your money.
Yeah, I would be surprised if you ever listen to a financial planning or an investment advising radio show like this and somebody was actually giving advice, because there's so much that we have to uncover and understand about who's asking the question before we could actually say, this is what's right in your situation. And most of the time, Nick, just like you gave us a little bit of good information there, but that's only the tip of the iceberg of what we would have to know about you to say, here's the right type of portfolio allocation for you, Nick. So we're not going to give you advice in a question like this, but we're going to tell you the things that you need to consider to get to that answer. And we feel that that's a starting point at least. But I like the fact that that you've got that job that is working well for you. Congratulations on that. And if you want to sit down with us and get to a real answer to your question, then by all means, we'd be happy to sit down with you. Here's how you would do that, or anybody else out there. Give us a call at 336-391-3409. You can also visit us at thewealthguardians.com and sign up to attend a planning process session with Doug, Garrett, or myself. It's usually 4 meetings, no cost or obligation to sit down with us. And in the end, you will have gotten some good information about what financial planning looks like and what we think as fiduciaries would be the most beneficial things for you to do, whether it's a tax planning strategy or a portfolio allocation strategy, the things that you can do to best have your portfolio achieve and accomplish your goals and expectations in retirement. So Nick, thank you for that question. And thank you for being a teacher out there. Doug, let's go to the next one here. And I think this might be the last one that we've got time for. This is Winston in Winston-Salem. And he says, I'm a retired veteran living off my military pension as well as Social Security disability because I was wounded in Afghanistan. If I find a job, I'd lose the disability pay, but still have the pension, of course. Do you think it's worth finding a job even though I'd lose the disability?
Well, I'll say this, Winston. This really isn't a question for us. This will be a question for a good attorney who's well-versed in estate planning, Social Security benefits, and veterans benefits. I will say that if you find a job, it's possible you won't lose the disability benefits. But again, you need to call a good estate planning attorney. And if you need to know one, we work with a great estate planning attorney over in Greensboro. So give us a call at 336-391-3409.
Yeah, I'll say this, Winston. Your question is very subjective. There's going to be some things you just can't quantify as far as the positives and the negatives of having a job out there. I am sure that to a certain degree, having a job and going out and having something to do is going to have a certain amount of pros that you can't put a dollar amount on. And now if that job pays more than what your VA to your disability benefits are, we would have to discuss that. But if it does, and it's going to give you something to do, and it's going to make your days more complete and give you a sense of purpose, then that might very well be worth losing the disability pay. As Doug said, not in all cases does that actually happen, but there are some cases, as you said, where it does happen. But there's too much out there to a way that's subjective that I think you're going to have to find the answer to this. But we'd love to walk you through the thought processes to help you figure that out for yourself. So thank you for the question and thank you for the service. Doug, I was wrong. I think we got time for one more.
I'd like to get to Nadia's question.
Okay, so here's Nadia. Doug, Garrett, and Brice. And Nadia's in Danville. I once worked with a financial advisor who ended up in jail for securities fraud. This was more than 20 years ago, but I haven't worked with a financial advisor since then because I have trouble trusting them. My financial situation has gotten complicated and I probably need some help. Do you have any recommendations on how I can overcome my trust issue and find somebody I can be confident in? Doug?
Yeah, being in the business since 1988, I've certainly seen plenty of financial advisors get themselves in trouble like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad to see. And I can understand your reluctance to find another financial advisor after having been through that ordeal. But start with a fiduciary.
That's right.
As fiduciaries, have to work in your best interest.
That's right.
That's how our license are created.
Only 50% of people who bill themselves as advisors out there are obligated to work on the fiduciary standard. Yeah. If they're not, then that means that they can take what's in their best interest at heart at the same time that they're telling you what you should do. And you certainly would not want to have that type of person making a decision for you if they're able to consider what's right for them at the same time. So I always recommend that be the first question that somebody asks. If they're looking for a financial planner or a financial advisor, that's the first question you ask is, are you obligated to work on the fiduciary standard? And if they come back to you with any answer other than yes, you might want to keep shopping around because that's a really important thing. It's like a doctor having taken a Hippocratic oath. You probably wouldn't go to a doctor who isn't obligated to work on those standards. Yeah. So anyway, that's it. So Nadia, thank you for your question. If you would like to sit down with us, we are fiduciaries. We're holistic financial planners, and we specialize in retirement planning. And so if you'd like to sit down with us, 336-391-3409. There is never a cost or an obligation to sit down with us and see what help and services our expertise might be able to provide you in your retirement planning. Well, that is going to wrap it up, Doug. No more time this weekend.
All right.
Time to tune on the games. All right. Well, that always wraps it up for us here in the second segment. Thank you for joining us. We hope the rest of your weekend is everything you want it to be. This is Brice Payne, along with Doug Ray. The show's The Wealth Guardians, helping you retire the job, and keep the paycheck. And I want to remind you, sound financial plans do not create themselves. This is Newstalk 94.5 WPTI, and this is 96.7 FM WTOB.
Hi, it's Garrett Ray with the Wealth Guardians. Thanks so much for listening to the show. Make sure to check out our weekly series, The Vault, on YouTube. Find our channel, The Wealth Guardians, where we talk about all things retirement planning and cover new topics each week, such as Social Security, tax planning in retirement, and our thoughts on investment best practices, and much more. New episodes air Thursdays at 2 p.m. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can get notifications when we release new episodes. We're here to help you retire the job and keep that paycheck. We'll talk soon.